So with that, you're certainly going to be equipped with a lot of inspiration and knowledge. So let's kickstart with our first panel discussion of the day. And today we'll be talking about innovation impact, people, planet, and prosperity. Innovation certainly has been very crucial to mankind from time immemorial, I would say. It's a very powerful tool and it helps bring positive change to actually solve problems and create new opportunities. It also involves a lot of challenges when it comes to the status quo, and that's difficult for a lot of companies and systems and processes. For instance, we've seen technology innovation impact people in both a positive and a negative manner, be it automation, AI, biotechnology. Responsible innovation is the framework that helps for development of technologies. It should be dependable, trustworthy, open, and safe. So let's begin by welcoming on stage all our panelists and the moderator. We'll begin with Shirish Arya, who is a co-founder and director at ImmunoAct. He's a moderator and an MBA by education, has a leadership role at AP Moller Maersk in Hong Kong and Copenhagen. He's transitioned to tech entrepreneurship in the year 2013 and believes that biotech is going to drive the next wave of deep tech innovation transforming healthcare. We have Gajanan Gande, who is the country head and VP at Dana Corp, and he has over 34 years of experience in the automotive industry, leading various leadership positions in the US, in India, and in China. Mr. Gandhi is a distinguished alumnus of IIT Bombay and has received the prestigious Distinguished Alumni Service Award of 2023 and actively mentors startups focusing on technology, also serving on the SINE Advisory Board. Skanda Prasad is our next panelist, Group CFO at Wabag, and this is a pure play water technology multinational. It has a presence in over 25 countries. A chartered accountant and IIM Lucknow alumnus, Skanda Prasad has received numerous accolades and top honors, including the top 400 CFOs of India and the CFO of the Year Indian Achievers Award 2023. Varun Jain is GM ZFTCI Hyderabad, who has over 20 years of experience in AI, in data science, and digital transformation. A Harvard Business School alumnus and INSEAD visiting faculty member, he leads ZF India's AI Tech Center and Center of Competence for Digital Twins. Also founded a learning machine which is based on quant startup and has collaborated with Niti Aayog on smart city projects. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on board all of our top guests and panelists. A round of applause as we will be kickstarting our first panel discussion, Innovation, Impact, People, Planet, and Prosperity. Welcome to all of you, and I'm going to hand it over to you to take it forward for the first panel discussion of the day.
So a very good morning to all of you. So I have the honor of having or hosting three very experienced, power-packed panelists over here from three different backgrounds, but all three backgrounds or all three industries which are radically changing the way we work, the way we operate, the way we live. So we will explore all those aspects of how it is already shaping. The topic, as you can see, is about innovation. So we'll talk about technologies and the impact is having on different aspects. So people, and when I say people, largely around well-being, planet, around sustainability, and prosperity, how our economic agenda is shaped through these technologies. So thanks all the panelists, thanks a lot. So if I can just start by maybe just drawing in and setting the context, and if each of the panelists can give one or two examples from within their industry of how a key innovation in their industry is actually changing or impacting the way we live or would impact in the very near future. So Skanda, if I can ask with you, you come with a very deep experience in water recycling, renewables. That's your area of operation, something that is essential to living. So can you just sort of expand on how your innovations are impacting day-to-day life?
Thank you, Shirish. Good morning to all. Um, Pardon me, my comments will be more generic. I'm not the tech guy here. I don't understand technology from a technology perspective. I understand it more from an investment perspective. Water, I mean, it's broadly an essential sector, and in India, yes, it's not received the kind of attention that it should normally receive. But now, there are two major sectors where we see both from an innovation as well as from, let's say, the value perspective that is going up. One is, of course, desalination, and desalination has gone through its own chain of innovations, moving from thermal desalination to polymeric membrane based desalination. Now we are moving towards ceramic desalination. So, and this is typically how the membranes would change. This this change in the MOC for material of construction for the plants would elongate the life of plants, improve efficiency of plants, because as you know, a polymeric membrane requires a backwash, and when you do a chemical backwash, a membrane obviously suffers damage, and over a period of time, if you don't maintain it well, um, it reduces the life of the project. However, when we move to ceramic membranes, it makes it that much more easier in terms of maintenance. So, from a long-term perspective, this is one innovation I would say directly that is going to impact desalination, moving from thermal to polymeric or polymeric to ceramic. Second is, of course, I think a big wave in India is going to be around recycling of water. Today, I mean, if I take the 2021 numbers, we produce about 72 billion liters. Right. What gets treated is about, or what we have a capacity to treat is about 30%. And what is usable capacity out of that is about 75%. So practically 75% of our sewage doesn't even gets primarily treated. Forget about recycling, forget about tertiary use. So, and we are a water scarce economy, and we will see in years to come that we are not going to have fresh water. Desalination is not. Yeah. So these are the two big things that we are also working on, apart from working on industrial water. But I think desalination is here to stay. Recycling of water, of course, is going to be the future.
Yeah. And just for the audience, knowledge of the audience, so many of these desalination plants are today actively supplying water to our cities. You come from Chennai, which is a water scarce city. Is it actually impacting lives on the ground as we speak? If you can just give some numbers or something for us to comprehend it.
No, Chennai is a great story from a desalination as well as recycle. If you take recycle, Chennai recycles 20% or more of its water.
Right.
Pioneer in recycling. And Chennai being in the rain shadow area, obviously we need to have water security, and we have gone through our own day zero scares. But today, as Wabag, we have built 100 million liters per day project. This is about 13 years back. Now we are building South Asia's largest project, which is a 400 million liters per day desalination project. So the coast is going to desalinate about 700 million liters. In the next 24-30 months, it will be operational. The requirement of Chennai is about 13 to 1400 MLD. So 50% of Chennai's water is only going to be desalinated water. The rest is going to come out of fresh water. And fresh water again is not perennial, which means my and our organization's personal view is that 10 years down, you will see recycled water being supplied to homes. So recycle and desalination will dominate even when it is required for domestic consumption. And we have built India's largest industrial grade desalination plant, which treats the sewage water from the municipality and supplies to the industrial corridor, the Sri Perumbudur, Uragadam, where you have the Saint Gobain's, Hyundai's, who consume this. And this releases water for domestic use. So that is the way. So in a way, we are indirectly ensuring that fresh water is used only for what it has to be used, rather than being used for industry, which can use recycled water, demineralized water of quality that they need.
Okay. Thanks, Kanda. So Varun, I'll move on to you. You come from the most exciting. I think most of the students sitting out here would be more interested in what you have to say. You come from the world of AI and digital twin. Digital twin I read up only today morning just to understand what to discuss, but it seems like a very interesting happening area as well. So again, all of us have an opinion on AI, but if you can just specify with some examples on any one or two industries where AI, digital twin is making a real impact, which is visible, which is tangible to a layman like us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I come from automotive industry, mobility, and the purpose around innovation in that area. If I talk about AI, digital twin, or various other technology, so I would start from what's the purpose around it, and the purpose I see is to bring efficiency in the systems, which eventually help the consumer, but also the internal stakeholders. So I would put one purpose as efficiency. The other one I would put up as, for sure, safety, to make the roads safer, lesser accidents. So all the evolution or what is happening in and around us or which is available are largely in these two categories, if I may say so. So if I pick up what we do or largely what is the industry doing in these areas, if I take up on efficiency is, so we have systems around the chassis systems that we have or the transmission systems that we have, right? How do we make the car from a user perspective, which means they have a better roll control? Very simple, right? When we take a steep turn, there have been systems earlier which were available in terms of algorithmic space, but now because of intervention of high performance computing, which is part of our vehicles as we develop and also going forward, there are systems which can bring all of those. So efficiency in having a better user experience, and this is a very implicit one, right? So you have an adaptive learning algorithm sitting inside one of the electronic control unit for a chassis system. Sorry if I went a little too deep in this, but it primarily is acting and adapting to the experience or primarily the velocity which is available for that particular vehicle. So that's one example, if I say. Now, let me zoom out a little bit and talk about the perception systems, which is why we see a lot of camera-based vehicles, radar, and so on and so forth. And to primarily identify the objects so that the car decision making is better. And that's where a lot of intervention of AI is definitely happening. I'll take another example of here where there's an immense amount of help which is in the internal stakeholders. We as part of the automotive industry and aeronautical, they are primarily complex system industries. So the development cycle is huge here, because we make safety critical systems and equipment and components. And here, because of the advent of quote-unquote generative AI or large language models, we are solving a lot of problems in our development processes as well. You take up how we can reduce the life cycle of development, which is right from taking multiple requirements from us, which is related to safety, cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. And not just AI, the digital twin also comes into the play that if the development cycle is for multiple years and if we need to produce cars more rapidly, then it is also about how we can virtualize a lot of stuff, and that's where the play of digital twin comes in. So I can keep going on, but yeah.
No, great. And if I can just contribute to that, even in the area that I come from in biotech, the whole drug discovery, modeling, and AI's interplay with that is going to sort of shorten the whole product development life cycle significantly. So I think there's also that
Absolutely.
aspect of the healthcare as well. So Mr. Gajanan, you come with a very vast experience in the automotive industry. I think Varun has set the base for how we see the future. In terms of how we power the entire automotive industry, and there is this whole EV revolution, but there's also talk of green hydrogen and other technologies that will shape our automobile industry at large. Can you just throw some light on how rapid this change is, how impactful this is, and what are the new technologies in EV itself or beyond EV that we should watch out for?
I think to set the base first, why do we need EVs in the first place, right? If you look at global climate change, there's a Paris Accord that talks about 1.5 degree maximum changes that we want in the world. India contributes to 7% of the world's pollution. Of the pollution in India, 40% of that comes from automotive emissions. And if you look at the amount of money the government pours in automotive fuels, like imports, for example, we import $122 billion of petroleum, crude petroleum every year. And we subsidize $30 billion of diesel in India. So we add off all that, it's $150 billion of import plus subsidy cost that the government bears. Now, if we were to actually put the same money into electrification of vehicles, it will eliminate the emissions, at least at the localized areas, until we figure out a way to power our thermal plants or remove our thermal plants and power with green energy, solar, wind, or waves, or whatever it is. Then we will be able to make a complete green solution across the board. And the expected market size of electric vehicles by 2030 is about $50 billion. Okay. So that's peanuts compared to 150 that we are spending today. So it's a matter of where we put our priorities. And the world is putting its priority on electrification. Electrification is not new to the world. It was 100 years back also we had electric vehicles. But the petroleum lobby somehow managed to get us away from that for obvious reasons. Now today, in terms of what innovation is driving the electric vehicles, it is happening in different stages, in different segments, differently. So if you look at two-wheelers, for example, there's a lot of solutions available for electric motors, hub motors, drive motors, etc. And we expect that by 2030, at least 80 to 90% of the two-wheelers will become electric in India also. China did it in 2012. They just said no more diesel, or no more petroleum-based two-wheelers. So that was eliminated by a decree, right? India will do it democratically, and so will take a few more years, but it will happen. Two-wheelers are very easy to do. Three-wheelers, the government needs to step in and convert them. Four-wheelers will be a bit slow because of obvious reasons of charging, etc., etc. So in terms of what are the technologies that are driving these areas, one, as he said, the powertrain, which includes the motors that drive, the controllers, whether it's an inverter that changes AC to DC, or DC to AC, the ECUs that control the entire vehicle, and thermal management. These are very key areas in which a lot of innovation is happening. Now, Dana is into low voltage, high voltage. If you look at all the buses that are running in the country today, almost 70% of them are powered by Dana powertrain, which is the motor and the controller together. Okay, and we also make the axles and everything. But so in that sense, we have managed to innovate or create a supply chain in India, allowing us to localize up to 70% in the high voltage and almost 80 to 90% in the low voltage. That's a remarkable achievement, I think, considering that except for very few parts like semiconductor chips and IGBTs and magnets, we have managed to find local Indian suppliers. In terms of opportunity for further innovation, AI is going to be playing a very, very critical role because there's so much data being generated in electric vehicles that we need to figure out how to use that data intelligently. And whether it's in taking turns, whether it's in identifying objects in front of you, or deciding when to turn the lights on. I mean, so many things, even your heads-up displays. All those technologies can be improved through innovation with AI and machine learning. And the good news is, all this is happening in the car, but the data can be accessed sitting in your office, right? So you are able to manipulate, I was talking to Chetan Maini, who was the founder of Riva. Riva is his mother's name, which was the original name of the car. And in 2004 or 5, I think they were generating, they were selling vehicles which were sold in Norway and Sweden. And they were actually managing the vehicles from India in Bangalore. I mean, they were ready at that time with that technology. And they could tell what is the battery level, what is the status of the, many things that they could control from here. And so it is nothing new. It's just a matter of how quickly we can make it uh, develop it along with all the other technologies that are developing, right?
So then let me take you on to the next phase of our discussion. So we know these technologies are changing our day-to-day lives in a very profound way, some very visible, some maybe not so visible. But let's just take EV as an example. Now there is a whole controversy around, is it truly CO2 impacting a CO2 footprint, or is it just that we are shifting from one area to another area? There are concerns around or discussions around how do we manage the entire supply chain, both in terms of sourcing lithium, but also in terms of the disposal, and the whole range of discussions around that. How do you measure? So moving on from just the impact point of view, how do we measure that what is the positive impact and what is the impact which we don't want or which are negative impact, so that we have a broad understanding of whatever we are doing today in terms of our technology change is impactful positively and we are able to reduce? Is there as an industry, is there a thought around how do we measure our technology change?
See, all new things are exciting in the beginning. Even when you get married, you're excited in the beginning, and things you start to figure out all the issues later on. Similarly, with electric vehicles, we're all excited about the new technology. We are not worried about all the problems that will come along with it in the future. I think there are a lot of problems. One is the source of electricity is not green. Okay, that is itself a big problem. We're shifting the pollution from localized areas to some remote areas in Jharkhand and other places where there's a lot of pollution. The second is the battery technology. We are having anywhere from lead acid batteries to lithium ion to nickel cadmium, whatever battery technology is being used. Each of the battery for a car, for example, is it's two or three chairs here. It's very heavy. It's very difficult to one cell goes out in the battery. We have to figure out how to fix it. Whether we can repair it, whether we can change it. And then at the end of life, after OEMs are guaranteeing only 8 years of battery life. What happens beyond that? The whole thing is going to be either thrown away, garbage dumped, whatever it is. So we have to develop technology for reuse, recycle, repurpose these batteries. Maybe take them from automotive to solar battery storage, because they also need storage and that can go on for a much longer time. So that is also very critical. Third is all these battery technology itself is changing literally every 2-3 years. So consumers are very concerned about, should I buy this car today and then 3 years later, my technology is going to be obsolete. And then I have to look for, 40% of the car is wasted, right? Is battery. So then new business models are coming in, like the battery as a service, which MG has introduced in India. It's a very bold step, I think. That suddenly makes an electric car being 15% more expensive to 40 to 30% less expensive than a traditional vehicle. And you're able to afford it. And then you pay a certain fee to the OEM, and which is reasonable over the life of the vehicle for the use. And if you're not a big user of, you're not paying much and then the battery problem goes away from yourself, right? So those kind of solutions, business model solutions, will be very useful to solve some of these problems. But in terms of what happens to, how do we make this better for our planet? We need a lot of discussion. We need a lot of, there should not be a knee-jerk development of technologies. I'm sure the alternate technologies like hydrogen, fuel cell-based is also coming up. Some of the companies are working on it, but that's, again, 10 years away. I don't think we're going to have a solution in the next couple of years.
And I think similarly, if I move on to say AI side of things, Varun, now if you read on one side, the likes of Yuval Noah Harari, is the apocalyptic world with AI, but we see real change coming through AI as well. How do you again, or I know it's a very broad question, but how, if we were to put into some kind of a metrics, what change is positive that AI can bring? We discuss a few examples. But what are the negative impacts of AI and how do we measure that? Is there any thought within your industry, within the experts, leading experts in your industry?
Right. I think the positive metric or the metrics to look into like improvements or positive side is definitely lesser number of accidents on the road. So they're directly measurable. Then about efficiency of the vehicle, performance of the vehicle. So those are quite directly measurable, and we see them already, right? New ADAS functions coming in and so on and so forth. But let me maybe start on, I would say the areas that we need to be cognizant of when we are introducing all these technologies, and largely if I speak a lot about AI. So I got a little tangent here. The last GPT-3, which was trained, that is about 120 odd vehicles running for an entire year, and that was the amount of carbon which was generated for training. So my angle over here is that it is generating, it's about the sustainable environment. And this is just one large language model that I am talking about, right? So one is that the amount of compute and the energy which is going in training these models, that is one area to be cognizant of, and it's measurable. The other one I would definitely pick up is the whole discussion about ethics in AI, which is bringing in fairness over dependence on some of the technologies. I see them that they are here for augmentation, but if we start relying on them, then how trustworthy are they? So the trustworthiness index, and there are, in EU there has been quite a bit of maybe detailing that has happened around this. There are indexes which are built and so on and so forth. But I think this discussion should be much more broader. That should be there. Fairness about how the decisions are being taken. Trustworthiness, as I said, is one of them. And the last one that I would also talk about, privacy. The privacy, because as Gajanan mentioned, there is immense amount of data that is generated. So what about the privacy that about the data that is collected for individual, community? You can categorize the data in multiple ways. So I see that is one of the metrics to be cognizant of as we develop more and more in these areas.
Yeah, thanks, Varun. Skanda, similar question to you. We know the positive impacts of water security, but are there impacts that we need to be cognizant, ecosystem, its impact, or any things which you would want to highlight from a measurement point of view? If more and more, if we are going to become a more urbanized country, which we will, and more reliance will come from some of the renewables and desalination projects, are there other things that we need to watch out for?
I think we are already largely under measuring the impact of water on industry in India. I don't think there are fair measurements of what absence of water security can do to either industry or the society. Because if you take India, we still live in this our own feeling that water is available. We don't really have to value it. There are very few cities which are actually putting a price to water, actually measuring usage. We lose 15% of our water in transmission. That's the non-revenue water amount that we use, that we lose even through the infrastructure. So there are anything that you dip into, if it comes to water, it's only going to be an opportunity. There's very little risk, because the treatment, I think, has fairly matured as a system. If you take desalination, we're moving more towards green desalination, using green energy to desalinate water. Energy recovery is already something that we do, because you need huge amounts of energy during operation. 70% of the cost of operating any desalination plant is power. So if you do not find a way to reuse the power in a way, there are energy recovery devices which, when you do a reverse osmosis, there's a lot of pressure which goes, and that is recovered and reused. And that way, you're able to cut down the amount of energy in a conventional desalination plant by close to 40-50%. So half the energy, you can produce the same amount of water. If you take recycling, again, you're talking about total resource recovery. Today, the treatment itself is not measured. As I said, we don't treat 75% of our sewage. I mean, look at the next step of total resource recovery. You can get gas out of sewage, which we do in our plants to subvent electricity, or now we are venturing into a CBG. Second is water, which can be used by industry. Third is the sludge and organic manure that can be used. So anything that you dip into as far as water is concerned, by just the nature of the maturity of the sector in India, is only going to be an opportunity. And yeah, energy is the biggest kind of, I would say, the risk that we have to control. See how we can make it more green, because water is green, but what goes into treating water should remain green, and we should not kind of in the process.
Similar to the EV story that,
That's right, that's
while the
right.
output is green, but what is the input
Correct.
has to be. Fair point. Um, Again, Skanda, if your industry is an industry which requires a lot of stakeholder management. There is government involvement, there is public at large, which is used to free water. There are other aspects, of involvement. How do you engage? If you can just throw some light on some success stories or some bottlenecks on how do you manage external stakeholders so that they can see the change or they can be part of that change, to put it more this thing. So
See, water is a social sector, will remain socially dominant, because 70-80% of the water is managed only by, I would say 100% of the water is only managed by government. It's still not privatized as far as India is concerned. Yeah, globally there is privatization. When the way we do stakeholder management is, first, there's a lot of policy advocacy that is required. First step is to put up policies. Second is to actually enforce it. Like, let's say there is an NGT which where the gavel comes down, but really, is it impacting? Do the industries take real action in terms of water security? That's something which is debatable. What we have seen over the last, say, decade and a half is water-focused policies that are coming through, like a river clearing program as big as Namami Gange. There is also a safe use of treated water policy which has been released by the NMCG, which means there is a direction to use recycled water even for potable use in the future. There are larger city-wide management of water which is coming up today, and this is evident in the recent budget, where it was announced that 100 cities would come under a total water management plan through bankable projects. So we do our part in terms of policy advocacy here. First, what kind of technologies do we need? Bringing energy recovery, bringing resource recovery into this. Second, you need to keep promoting the fact that recycled water is perfectly usable, perfectly potable. Maybe there is a stigma today, but at some point in time it will become a necessity. The third myth that we keep busting is desalination is not costly. There is a general myth that desalinated water is costly. Desalinated water is per liter, extremely cheaper than what you pay for a liter of bottled water, and you get better quality out of that. The fourth advocacy that we do is in terms of how we manage our infrastructure. So we, as a company, we have managed the whole city of Istanbul for 3 years, the complete sewage infrastructure and water infrastructure. That we brought to India. We did policy advocacy again, and you see already in Uttar Pradesh, there are 4 cities which have gone under total water management. We're managing the whole sewage of Agra and Ghaziabad today. That's about 600 million liters of sewage every day. Treatment plants, pumping station, pipelines. So all of these, in a way, will lead to more first understanding about water, maintaining the infrastructure, impetus for recycle, busting the myth of desalination. And of course, yes, today you see any future technology or any future expansion, if there is a refinery, they put up a desalination plant because they don't depend. They've seen the examples of like an MRPL which had to go through its own suffering because of lack of water. People use they have common effluent treatment plants and recycle plants. So industries today are moving more towards water security. They are not depending on fresh water because the government is coming down quite hard in terms of giving them licenses to pick water. Green hydrogen, solar PVs, semiconductor, all of these require ultra pure water, and their water is going to be critical. It's not going to be an utility, it's going to be an input. So this will change the face of water when it comes to, and this advocacy again industry is also understanding, and last but not least, I think AI in water is now picking up quite a lot, where you're looking at city pipelines. I mean, we don't have infrastructure drawings today. So how do we map out where we lose water? Where are the pipelines, the geo studies that you do, various other ways of treatment. So all of these, we are in every leg of this, and we do advocacy at industry forums and more importantly at government forums.
Varun, again, your sector is slated to sort of bring large change. I'm talking just AI in general. And there is this whole, again, stakeholder management, both from a government's perspective, because there is this whole talk about regulating AI in some format, but also a lot of displacement that is expected, a lot of existing well-entrenched industries, where there's a lot of displacement that is expected in some form or shape. How is the leaders in the AI industry, again, thinking about how they can contribute? How do the stakeholder management happen so that we can reap more of the positive benefits, as you said, augmentation and other areas, rather than being left behind in a lot of social changes, which is negative?
Sure. I think the external playbook is very similar to what Skandar said. Yeah. Advocacy, talking about it. And maybe just a line around this is GM came up with the whole concept of robo-taxis, and it couldn't go through. I mean, they had to shelve it because the regulations were not there around this, and they had to completely stop that. And there is more to do. So similar kind of a playbook of advocacy. But when I talk about AI in general, I would bring up a view of whenever there is like a big change because of technology, you know, what happens, and in this case AI. And I think about because of there is an immense amount of maybe things what a generative AI, large language model of the world can do at this moment. There is a fear which is about what happens to what I do currently, right? And this is not more specific to the blue-collared segment, if I may. This is more towards the so-called the specialized one. And the idea is that there is a lot of hue and cry about if AI can do this, then do we need, you know, all these specialists around? And how I see this is basically about the industry and the organization should think about reskilling from a very, very different angle altogether, right? And I think this is about not just about upskilling yourself in something, but I basically say to reskill yourself completely, which is you have tertiary skills to build up, not just what you do. So that's another way to maybe calm down the changes that are coming up and then open up newer areas of specialization people can think about. So not everybody can an AI engineer, but there can be more people can pick up when there is a very specific skill program that runs in the industry. Yeah.
And I think that's not just a question of the industry to think about reskilling, but even our education institutions. We're sitting in a premier education institution, but how will the education of future look like for the future needs of the industry?
Absolutely.
We were talking just before the panel discussion about the whole, so we are all very excited about EVs scaling very, very fast. But are the vendors ready? Are the vendors from a supplier point of view, the whole supply chain, and you talked about recycling as well. So how would you say the state of readiness, and how is the industry, automotive industry, ensuring that the whole supply chain or the whole stakeholder management around the change that is happening in front of us is actually gearing up to deliver it?
So I think we have to address it from two different segments. One is the big tier ones who could be drastically affected, and then the small MSMEs who could be affected in a smaller way. So if you look at big tier ones, whether it's ZF or Dana, 5-6 years back, we realized that this world is going to go electric very quickly. And hence, even though we are a 105-year-old ICE powertrain company, we started investing heavily into electric vehicles technology, or even acquiring companies. Almost 10 companies we acquired all over the world, right from motors, controllers, software companies, assembly, ECUs, power modules, etc. So we started becoming ready. We invested almost $500 million over the world, including in India, to be prepared for this onslaught of, unfortunately, it has backfired in the last 1 year, and I think over the next 6 months, where suddenly the electric vehicle market is drastically reduced, and we have an overcapacity of manufacturing in all over the world. But that'll change very quickly, I think. But so to answer your question, the tier ones are becoming ready. Cummins, for example, Cummins is a ICE engine company. They realize that ICE engines are going to be over time not required. So they bought a company called Meritor, which is into electric powertrain, into other normal powertrain, which is required for electric vehicles also. So they are also going laterally and buying out companies. Many other, I'm sure ZF is going to go into other areas where they're also developing their own technology. So we are all big enough to understand the big changes coming and be prepared for it. But when it comes to MSMEs, there is a different situation. So I was at a conference 2 days back, and the topic there was, how is the supply chain ready for this onslaught of EVs? And my point was, luckily, the onslaught of EVs is slow. Okay, it's not fast enough that I have to change overnight. At the same time, it allows me to the management of these small companies or medium companies sufficient time to figure out what are the lateral areas that we can diversify into, and that will still keep me in the EV business, right? And except for two-wheelers, where the change is happening faster than or not even faster than we want, but it is happening faster than the four-wheeler, three. The others are going really slow. So you have sufficient time to decide where you want to get into, what are the big market impact areas, which are the ones that we can easily invest in and start in communication with the OEM, purchasing groups. Understand what is the best thing for you to do to prepare yourself for that onslaught of electric vehicles. Of course, the one big area where we are going to really struggle is indigenizing the development, design, and engineering of electric vehicles. So many companies, whether it's Dana, Continental, ZF, are establishing GCCs in India. And we've added over 250 engineers in the last 1 year, supporting global development of electric vehicles for Jaguar Land Rover, for Volvo, etc. So that then has to be applied to the Indian context. And then we start creating lower cost products for our own country, which will be suitable for our own roads, because nothing that's available outside will be immediately transferable because of the conditions of our roads. And our roads are extremely different in different parts of the country, and it's very difficult to design a product that's going to be panacea for everything, right? So design development is definitely a key area where we see an opportunity. As far as supply chain, I'm not very concerned about it. That was the overall conclusion of that conference 2 days back.
It will respond to the market forces.
There is enough time. Luckily, we've all got enough time to adjust.
Right. All right. So we've got another 5 minutes, and if we can take 1 or 2 questions, maybe from the audience as well. So I'll just open up the forum a little bit.
I think we are trying to stick to time today for based on yesterday's.
So anybody? Sure.
Toyota has decided that they will not go for EV, and they have decided that they will go for hydrogen vehicles or other modes of fuel cells. What's your take on that? Why they have decided, in respect to other companies like China and Tesla, they have gone in big way for EV, and does that mean anything for India? Because we are dependent on a lot of raw materials which are required for battery technology and EV vehicles. Thank you.
Sometimes when these large companies say something, they say one thing and they actually mean something else and they do something else, okay? So Toyota may, on its own, project that it's not going to go big into EVs. But what they have done is they've tied up with Maruti, which Maruti initially said they're never going to get into EVs, and they're going to now launch 9 electric vehicles, okay? So Toyota, what they'll do is they'll co-brand vehicles with Maruti in India. That will then, like they have done the High Rider and a couple of other vehicles, that will then be their ability to bring electric vehicles in India. But Toyota on its own is trying to get into hydrogen or other fuel cell vehicles in Japan. They have enough vehicles ready for implementation. But since we don't have enough supply chain capability for hydrogen in India, we are not going to be able to implement it very quickly. So I think Toyota will focus more on hybrids. Honda is also focusing on hybrids, where the electric part of the hybrid is smaller. You know, you have a small motor, a small battery pack that allows you to enhance your driving range, plus gives you that last 15, 30, 40 kilometers of ability to go without fuel, right? So I think you will see a lot of hybrids come into India, and customers are preferring hybrids, because if I don't have to have a charging station in my home and yet have electric, I get the best of both worlds, right? So you'll see that balance of hybrids being preferred. Although 10 years back when Honda launched a fully hybrid vehicle in India, they had to sell it at half the price because nobody was willing to buy. So times change, things change, and Toyota will introduce electric vehicles, except that they will not maybe brand it the way, nobody's going to escape electric vehicle introduction, that I can tell you.
Actually, I have a related question. So, are there a lot of co-development models in your industries where you are partnering at a very early stage on how, so let's say an industry, a company has been there with a certain technology for last many decades, and now they're transitioning into a new technology. Are there co-development models that you are working with, or you come in fairly late?
No, everything is co-development. Like for example, when Packard introduces its heavy-duty truck, electric truck, they cannot do everything on their own. They don't have the ability. So they depend on Dana for developing the powertrain or somebody else. In India also, all these buses that you see on the road, they came to us and said, hey, we don't know anything about electric powertrain, please provide us this. So it's all co-development. Yeah.
Time for one last question.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, this is, my question is to Mr. Gandhi. At the incubator level, we are seeing a lot of new, registrations where innovators are working on new ideas, especially in the EV space. So while we know there are big players focusing on certain aspects, what is your, message or, suggestion to startups, especially the early stage innovators? What are the areas probably they should focus, and what would be the critical success factors to really take that journey ahead?
I think that's a great question. We have set up the e-mobility center in IIT Bombay, which I'm a big part of. In terms of what startups should do, they have to do two main things. One is don't work in isolation. Don't think I've got an idea and I'm going to, it's going to become $1 trillion company. Go and figure out whether there's a market for it, whether there's an opportunity for it. Talk to customers, do a lot of benchmarking of what's happening around the world. You don't have to develop everything in-house, right? It can be an idea that can be improved. So that's one thing. Don't do anything in isolation. Go and first understand the market, benchmark, and come back. Second is think about scaling up of your idea before jumping and developing it to a point where scaling up is extremely difficult. Because most of the startups, in my mind, don't understand the concept of scaling up. They think my idea is going to rock the world, and so involve people. And I'm an advisor to many startups, especially we fund over 100 startups through our company also. The first thing we tell them is think about how you're going to scale up, and don't think about the fact that this idea is only capable of supporting this segment. I see time's up, so I'll stop very quickly. For example, the motors that are developed, we can use them in electric motors, we can use them in boats, for example, where there's a lot of pollution in the rivers. So there's multiple places the same thing can be used. So try and apply it as many, think about all these lateral applications that can be used for your idea. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so very much to our esteemed panelists. A huge round of applause for them. They've been talking about scaling up, innovation, and looking after the planet, and of course, the truth behind what company strategies really are. I would like to invite on stage Janvi Suryavanshi. Please come on stage to provide and present our panelists with a small token of appreciation.